Okay, welcome everybody, online and in real life. Yeah, IRL. To Biljana's seminar presentation on systematic evidence synthesis, which I think will be very interesting also because you're talking about it in the context of environmental science. So a concept which comes, I think, originally much more from medical science. So I think it will be interesting also to reflect about, so kind of what's different in this use. And I'm sure you're going to talk about. Biljana, maybe you want to say a few words about yourself first. You're from Stockholm Environment Institute, and you're currently visiting research fellow here at Linköping University, TMT.
Yes.
And I'll just hand over to you, Trell.
Yes, thank you, Harold.
Sorry, and if somebody online, if anything doesn't work, just send us a message. Also, this question answer buttons should work. And also afterwards for the discussion, you are invited to ask questions and also use this Q&A function. We'll check that out.
Yes, very good. Okay, hello everyone and welcome. Biljana Macura is my name, Senior Research Fellow at Stockholm Environment Institute, where I focus on applying systematic topics from climate change to sustainable food consumption to wash and sanitation. So have been working across many different teams actually and projects within last 10 years. I was in SCI. My PhD is in biodiversity conservation, forest protected areas governance, but I feel like that's a second life. I'm really only now focusing on systematic evidence synthesis, developing methodology for it, providing training, involving myself in many methodology groups to develop specific better methodological approaches to specific processes within systematic reviews, including responsible use of AI in evidence synthesis. And you will see why my community is so also desperate for automation. Yes. Okay, so today, and really depending on the mood in the room, I was thinking to divide this talk in two sections, where part one will be explaining what are systematic reviews, why they're useful, when are they not useful, what are the principles for responsible use of AI in evidence synthesis. And the second part, a little bit shorter, will be how to make your traditional literature reviews better. So this is what I was thinking to do. But please, you give me feedback in a way on what you really want to hear. What we could spend more time. Okay, so. Just a quick pulse check. I don't see people online, but at least the ones in the room. Have you ever read a systematic review?
Yes.
Yes. Excellent. And have you ever conducted a systematic review?
No.
No? Okay. I think you have one in review. Yes. Okay. Excellent. So I think then possibly this will be useful to you. So let's start with the basics. Why do we need reviews? First of all, where there is a huge increase in scientific production every single year. I think this is a paper from 2021. I sadly couldn't find anything more recent, but at that point we have annual growth of science for 4% yearly. So often the ones who need to use this scientific evidence to make their decisions, they don't have time. Also, decisions cannot be made based only on one study, also because, different study designs, different contexts, etc. And so we also don't want to be in a situation where everyone is looking at one thing, but really concluding another thing. Instead, we would like to have a more broad picture of a specific question that we are posing. And also often signs tend to point in different directions. So you would like to have a more concrete answer with a specific confidence interval around it. So traditional reviews, systematic reviews, as Harald mentioned, they started somewhere in 1980s, and they originated from medical science, because the way how we traditionally do reviews is sadly prone to a lot of biases. To start with, first, there is often a lack of relevance. So traditional reviews are not often based on the needs of decision makers in policy or practice. So hence they're done, they often lack relevance for decision-making context. There is also something called mission creep, where you start one thing, but actually end up doing completely different study. There is an issue of selection bias or cherry picking, where studies that are included in your review are selected based on the fact that you know the author or you're familiar with, or that author has so many citations that you think you need to include it in your review, etc., etc. So introducing selection bias. There is also lack of comprehensiveness. Often when you go into, check review methodology, authors often use one single source of literature, either maybe only Scopus or only Web of Science, or maybe even only Google Scholar. There is also something called publication bias, which comes from the fact that not really including unpublished data. Some data is not very publishable, let's say, because it shows negative results or it doesn't show any results. So that becomes less sexy for journals to publish it. However, that creates a publication bias because you're making certain decisions based on not complete evidence base. We also have lack of transparency and replicability often. How many reviews you've read and you couldn't find any methodological detail about the review process. So that maybe today that's tiny little bit better now, but it's often traditional reviews are often not transparent. There is something also, especially in quantitative reviews, it's something called vote counting or quality bias, where actually you make conclusions based on the fact that if you're trying to understand whether specific intervention, for example, had any effect or not, you simply summarize the number of studies that show that intervention had positive effect, number of studies that showed negative effect, and number of studies that shows no effect. And you summarize that. But that actually doesn't take into account the methodological quality of the studies, nor, for example, the size of the sample in those studies, etc. And hence, finally, we have a discussion bias where certain studies are picked when presented in the findings and discussed over other studies. So as a response, in systematic reviews, try to combat all these different biases. Below you have some sources of the studies that I co-authored that are talking about these. So in systematic reviews, we try to engage with, well, I think many of you might find a difficult word stakeholder problematic, but let's actor engagement. So we try to engage with the ones who will be using that evidence in the decision making, in the policy or practice. We are having a protocol. It's a priori document before you start a review process that actually allows for detailed planning of the methodology and justification and review question from A to Z, how this review will look like and what the aims are. And then we try to do exhaustive search as many data, bibliographic sources as possible, both gray literature, so unpublished data, and academic published literature. We try to be as transparent as possible because then that drives replicability of what we're doing. And also we try to give different weights to different types of studies depending on their methodological quality. This is done both in qualitative and quantitative reviews, and each of these types of reviews have different types of tools to assess quality. So basically, we are doing a new peer review for every single study we include in our review based on the objectives of that review. We're trying as all relevant studies. So in which cases we do conduct systematic evidence synthesis, where we have large uncertainty in the evidence base, where we have some existing controversy or disagreement within the evidence base that we would like to understand better, when there is a very large need for accountability or transparency within specific subject or topic, when there is need to minimize subjectivity in our answers, and where we have a very large or disparate evidence base. So then we operate in, these reviews are done to support decisions, basically. These decisions could be, decisions made in policy, decisions made in practice, environmental management, for example, decisions funders, because these can give you an overview of knowledge gaps and knowledge clusters that then funders can recommend for more primary research or more reviews. And also, we can provide advice to primary researchers where to conduct more reviews or where there is primary research missing, so they can conduct it. This is operating in something called evidence-informed policy. That's the paradigm. Evidence-informed is as a link to the announcing that by scientific evidence, but there's so many other factors that come into decision making. So let us get a little bit practical. So this is how a systematic review process looks like. So first, we identify and formulate the question. This is done in a co-design setup. So in a workshop or a webinar where we invite users of potential evidence, discuss with them what is the most relevant question they would like to see answered that can support their decisions. Of course, systematic reviews can be done also without engagement component, but it's normally done in this. The group of scientists or other researchers publish and generate the protocol. This protocol can be either only registered or sent to a journal for complete peer review. So you get a feedback on your methodology. Then we go and search for all the studies, include only relevant evidence based on predetermined criteria, critically appraise the evidence. This is that part where we assess the methodology of each paper, and then extract and synthesize the data. This data can be qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods data. So you can, and there is, for every single type of data, there is different type of approach or methodology, especially in qualitative side. And I will mention something about it that you can use. And then we write a report and communicate back to the relevant parties, general public. We try to be as transparent as possible at every single stage, try to document everything, record, to increase repeatability of what we are doing, and try to publish all the supplementary materials in, open space. So people, and this supports then transparency. So really supporter of open science principles with the open protocol, open data, open methods, etc. So We have systematic reviews on one side, and then we have systematic maps on the other side. And systematic maps are actually catalogs of the evidence on specific topic. So if a systematic review asks what works, systematic map will ask what is the evidence on X, Y, Z. So it is a broader topic, and then it is mapping all the possible studies in that specific topic. And we are extracting only descriptors of these studies. So where these studies are collected, so population, what is it about, what kind of intervention it is, or exposure to something, what type of outcomes this study, what is the design of this study, etc. Depending on the question, you can extract. So you're not really extracting the findings of the actual study, which systematic review is doing. So as a result, we can create something like this, which was a visualization that will show us the distribution of the evidence gaps and evidence clusters, shows you where there is no evidence and where there is scientific evidence on the scientific topic. This was just from a review on human well-being and conservation interventions. So you have different types of outcomes connected to human well-being. As a rows and as a column, different types of conservation outcomes. And you can see that, and in some areas, it's really a lot of studies. In other areas, there is no studies. Sometimes you're conducting systematic review or a map as an empty review, actually, to show there is no evidence at all, and to show that perhaps decisions are based on, not scientifically supported, but they're based on guesstimates. One other interesting visualization is also something like this, where you show in geographical space where each study is located, so you can see the geographical gaps. This particular study was only the scope of this review was only in LMIC, so there is a line there. And then in this space, one can also, this map is interactive, and if you click on a dot, it will show you the metadata connected to that study. So that's also an interesting way to visualize the output of this systematic map. So this mapping method is actually helping for research discoverability because of these ways to catalog the evidence, create a searchable database that can be filtered, etc. And as I said, the focus is on really metadata extraction, not on actual findings of the studies. One can combine systematic mapping and systematic reviewing in something called evidence synthesis pathways, where you, for example, start with engagement and co-design. Policy and practice actors can then identify and give you their knowledge needs. Then we go back and try to prioritize these knowledge needs and try to confirm where is there a synthesis gap. And based on that synthesis gap, conduct a systematic map that will then give us clusters, which then can be further reviewed within a systematic review method, which can answer the question whether something works or not, under which condition, etc. Okay, so just to summarize quickly, which types of questions can we really answer with, let's say, quantitative systematic reviews? This is effectiveness of interventions. Does something work or not? Impact of or unintended consequence. What is the impact of climate change on mental well-being, etc. Policy effectiveness. Does specific policies, interventions work or not? Since we are doing a critical appraisal, we can also pinpoint to issues with quality in research. So one can also provide methodological patterns in primary research and say, okay, this research area really has, very good study designs or not. This is what needs to be improved, etc. So And that's one thing. However, with the qualitative evidence synthesis, we are getting a different perspective. I'm sorry about the very small font here. Forgot to edit this slide, but it's with qualitative evidence synthesis, we can look more into experiences, perspectives, beliefs, priorities, in the context of enriching the quantitative evidence synthesis, where they are focusing on specific effectiveness of policy or interventions. This can be also looked at as add-on, where qualitative evidence synthesis or quests looking into the context, appropriateness, or feasibility questions. So how a policy or strategy or intervention might be best implemented in a given context. Is it feasible? Whether what is the extent of the adoption, what are barriers and facilitators, what are the beliefs and attitudes of population towards specific policy or strategy, which values people attach to different outcomes. But also we can build refined models or mechanisms or relationships between the specific activity and its outcome. So just to put a little bit where we are operating, in which paradigm. So the quantitative reviews and some methods within the qualitative evidence synthesis, they're mostly on realist side, where there is relation to theory is to test it. Approach to synthesis more aggregative, where we are interested in really putting lots of studies together in one place and trying to conclude something, where we have all the methods are a priori designed and defined, and where we have really focused on magnitude of specific intervention, for example, or precision of that intervention. And it's really, the purpose is really instrumental. However, we also have the qualitative, majority of the qualitative methods, and I will show you now which one are in which on this continuum. A majority of qualitative methods are on this idealist side, where we have more of a need to generate the theory or to explain the theory, where we have more configurative approach to the synthesis, and where we're constantly having emerging topics, and we're constantly coming back to our literature to check, and it's a more iterative really process. Whereas with quantitative reviews and more realist reviews, actually it's mostly of a line in one direction, from searches to the outputs, really. So meta-ethnography, for example, and thematic synthesis, these are different methods. On configuring side, realist synthesis, framework synthesis, somewhere in the middle. And then we have thematic summaries in a more aggregative side, and obviously meta-analysis, which is quantitative method, it's further on aggregating side. So in the configuring bubble, we have interpretation that is largely during the synthesis to build the meaning. So we're constantly interpreting, and I think lots of you are on this side of the spectrum of research. Whereas in the aggregative side, where we're more about testing different methods, is more about interpretation before, for setting the question, and after, for understanding the findings. So, for example, framework synthesis. In framework synthesis, it's a qualitative evidence synthesis method that you start with a framework and you try to kind of plug in your evidence, qualitative or mixed evidence into that framework. And your review question is fixed and your sampling method is comprehensive. So you want to get as many studies as possible to fit within that framework. Thematic synthesis, for example, it is if you've done thematic analysis in your primary research, this is a counterpart where you're actually thematically coding the text from reviews, from other primary studies. Your question is also fixed. It doesn't change during the review process, and your sampling is comprehensive, and the type of evidence you're incorporating is qualitative. Interestingly, for example, with meta-ethnography, as in ethnographic research in primary research, you have constantly emerging review questions, you're refining your review questions. The whole process is very iterative, and the sampling is really purposeful. So you really can pick and choose, in a way, studies that would fit into your question, and you might work with multiple sets of these studies as you learn while you're doing your review. So you can see some parallel with the primary research there too. And each of these types of methods have, of course, their own communities of practice and their own set of questions that you can answer with, and their own purpose. So it becomes a little bit more complicated on the qualitative side, as always, as comparison on the quantitative side. But for example, these are some snapshots that I just tried to search very quickly for some types of reviews, just for you to understand the types of questions, for example. So there was a review a couple of years back on how people describe sensory experience of the natural world. So that was a review of qualitative evidence. Another meta-ethnography on global research on mental health and emotional impacts of climate change. Or for example, a meta-ethnography on collaborative interactions in relations to research impact. So how collaboration drives research impact in humanities. Or this other review on improving energy access is actually a mixed method review. So they were trying to understand what works in off-grid electrification technologies and how that improves energy access, climate and socioeconomic outcomes. But then they use a qualitative review to and what is the mechanism, why certain interventions work for certain outcome, why this intervention work for specific outcomes or not. Okay, so now when systematic reviews might not be appropriate, I thought we should also discuss that, because they're not obviously tools for everything, especially if you have limitations in the evidence base, when you have specific policy and practice context and issues with feasibility and resourcing. So obviously, you're not going to conduct a systematic review if there is no primary studies on the topic, unless, as I said, you want to prove that really there's nothing on the topic and you've done your comprehensive searches. When there is high heterogeneity among existing studies, so when studies on specific topic are very, very different, it's obviously very hard to put them together, especially if you're doing quantitative approach. When there is a recent high quality systematic reviews on the topic. So that's when you're starting your review, you should check how much studies you have and if there is any review that is on your topic, so you're not duplicating the effort and create research. Also, usually systematic reviews, we go through hundreds of titles, abstracts, full texts, 100,000s, I should say, not hundreds. It goes like a funnel. So we start with, 20,000 search results, screen for title and abstract. Then we have left about 3,000-4,000 full text that we retrieve and go through them, etc. So we are dealing with large volumes of scientific studies. So obviously, when there is a limited policy relevance or demand, you might not want to, use a big hammer for a very small nail. You might not need to conduct systematic review. When there is very short policy windows or urgent timelines, but this might change with AI. When there is a topic that is really well established, when we know that is where we really know the answer very well, and there is no need to reiterate that. Though this is very rare because you can go in many different depths. Usually systematic reviews are done with a minimum of 2 people because of the different procedures you use during systematic reviews. So you need consistency checkings, for example. It would be great to have methods expert as well, but one doesn't have because there is a lot of free resources out there. And also the issue is, especially with quantitative review, when you really have a very poorly defined review question or a scope, it's really nightmare to search for studies and to appraise them, to understand what's relevant, what not, if you really didn't define your research question very well. So that's why we insist on these protocols as well and peer review of the protocols, so you can get feedback on that part. However, as I said, some of the methods, especially more qualitative one, they really are thriving in this iterative setting where you learn while you're doing your review. So depending on your approach, this might be an issue. I wanted to talk a little bit about AI in evidence synthesis, but maybe I should just have a little break and ask you if you have any questions so far.
I'm sure there are. Mm-hmm. So should we go to questions now a little, or is this a very short thing?
This is rather short.
Because we could otherwise, because we had this plan, with this 10 minutes, that you maybe, if that's fine for you, still do the AI and then
super
discuss this part.
Let's do. Am I speaking too fast or no? Okay, super. Okay, so as I mentioned just now, we are really in this world dealing with very large amount of data that needs to be screened, extracted, etc. So we do there is not only increasing volume of scientific output, there is also increasing complexity of it, and more complex questions, more complex study designs, etc. We have shorter and shorter policy windows that we are operating with, and we would like to provide scientific evidence to, and obviously there is need for timely outputs. And with the transformer infrastructure and the breakthrough in training neural networks in general language understanding, we really saw opportunity here as a community. But just so you know in advance, we are very cautious as well. So and also the whole thing is helped by the fact that there's so many freely available generative AI tools. So really limited funds are needed, limited technical expertise even for the use of these tools. And last year I published a paper with colleagues where we basically identify for every single stage of the review, there is minimum 2 types of tools that you can use, from identification and formulation of the review question to searching for evidence to extraction of the data. These tools are really, there's millions of them. So this paper was published last year. I'm sure that this list is now even larger. As we discussed, this is a very fast-moving field, and there's many more applications of this. Plus, on top, the models itself, they're constantly improving. But the big $1 million question is, are these tools really that useful, and are they producing accurate and reproducible outputs? Accurate enough for our needs, actually. Because the whole paradigm, the whole thinking about systematic reviews is to produce accurate, reproducible result to feed into decision making. So we really need this to work if we are going to use it. But I don't have a straight answer to this, but I will discuss some of the known issues and limitations, just to remind you. And I'm sure you know this also from other applications. But AI models inherit and often amplify biases present in training data. So they can then underrepresent certain regions or demographics, and hence they can then reinforce publication bias or selection bias, or some of these biases that I mentioned from the very beginning. This skewed the synthesized conclusions and actually affect the equity in global policy decisions, because we're constantly then providing certain type of evidence that really is, biased geographically or in any other way. Then we have errors. We are very sensitive to errors, especially when it comes to false negatives. So excluding the evidence or recall, so excluding the evidence that really should be excluded, or creating noise, so including more evidence or more studies into our review that should not be there actually. So then this drives more manual effort for us to read through this evidence. So it really doesn't help us. Really, and also hallucinations. There is the problem with AI is that it generates the plausible sounding statements that are often incorrect. And this confidence in responses is often very problematic, as we also discussed. Then there is inconsistencies. Maybe if you ask in a one way, or if you ask tomorrow or in an hour the same question, you might not get the same output in answers or any other outputs. And that's a big problem, so replicability for us. This goes together with these models that are black box. So we are users. We don't have a control over these models. Someone else is developing them, right? So there's this many black box tools out there that I don't think even developers know actually what's going on in how complex the AI tools are. We have opaque algorithms, and this really is affecting our reproducibility and transparency, which is one of the pillars of systematic reviews. Often there is lack of domain understanding, so the contextual relevance is not there yet in some. And I really want to emphasize this. We have a huge environmental and social impacts. I think I have some numbers here I can quickly share with you, but I'm sure you already know this. So training of ChatGPT in Microsoft US data centers was directly evaporating 700,000 liters of clean fresh water. I mean, it's crazy. Global AI demand is projected to account for 4 to 6 billion cubic meters of water withdrawal in 2027, which is more than total annual water withdrawal of 4 to 6 Denmarks. I mean, and then also the number of data centers is constantly increasing. I think it surged from 8 million to 8 million from 500,000 in 2012, actually, etc. So we have, and also new models are stronger, more powerful, and are driving even more environmental and social impacts. There is also inequalities that this technology is producing due to, unequal energy access, unequal water access, unequal access to AI technology. Not everyone is, able to access this technology and use it. And also, not to mention poor labor conditions, especially in the training of AI, etc. But I'm sure you already are well familiar with this. So just to conclude, AI must be used responsibly, though AI tools can help to free up human time for more complex tasks. They can help us, for example, screening of evidence while we're doing the synthesis. And this is very good. It doesn't get tired. That's one thing. It can process larger amounts of information at higher speeds and can then make also evidence synthesis more accessible. But I think we still must, prioritize always accuracy over efficiency, and where human oversight of every single output remains essential. I'm part of the methodology group for responsible use of AI in evidence synthesis, and we are just issuing a statement on AI where we say our community is allowed to use AI, but on its own responsibility. So again, we cannot limit the use, obviously, but we have to warn people of different issues with this technology. And this is as if technology is now, but maybe in 10 years it's going to be completely different, and these slides will not be relevant at all. Also, there is a need for better understanding of these embedded biases, especially that comes from amplification of biases through the training data. Also, the way how you ask or fine-tune the model, you might get biased or not results. So this is something also to think about when prompting the generative AI. And there is a lack of validation studies. So we are lacking studies that, are conducted to validate the findings of all these different tools. There is lack of transparency, as I mentioned, the black box models. And I would say that we must use it only if essential. So we cannot really use AI for everything just because it's out there. So yeah, but yes, if you're interested, do check this responsible use of AI set of papers. They are currently on OSF, but I think they will be published soon as well. Some of the useful resources, this is just, I will not go through this, but people that have recording can see it. And also there is a slide with, 3 resources, the online courses and specific guidelines, etc. So yeah, I
think people can get in touch with us also if they would like to have a copy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, thanks so much, Biljana.
Yes, thanks.
Very nice. Thank you.
Often when you do critical appraisal, you assign, let's say, some kind of labels to say, okay, this is a very high validity study, this is medium validity study, this is low validity study. And sometimes you get rid of low validity studies, but there is a movement now to say, no, the studies, but then you do some kind of sensitivity analysis where you test how will you do low validity studies in or out. So yeah.
Good.
Okay.
We shouldn't miss out on your tips.
Yes.
On how we can improve.
Transparency. Yeah. Okay, so this is, I should actually check if this link works, but this is related to, I think, someone's question, Oksana, I think, asked about how long does it take. So they're not always appropriate, as I mentioned previously. They take time, they take stuffing and resources, but we can learn from them, we can keep, while we're doing our traditional reviews, we can keep asking ourselves a couple of questions. Have we missed some vital evidence? What have we done and how? Have we been consistent? Is evidence reliable? If not, what do we do? Okay. So yeah, so these are kind of the questions that we can ask ourselves while conducting a review. So the idea, especially if you're doing quantitative evidence synthesis, you try to be as comprehensive as possible within your resources. If you cannot be comprehensive, at least be transparent about it, okay? So you say, okay, I searched only one source. This was because such and such. And, so people or readers can understand what are your limitations. Also assure procedural consistency. I will explain in a moment what is that, and need for critical thinking all the time, especially when it comes to the critical appraisal. This is one of your stages. So I would say if you can use more than one academic database and search websites for grey literature. In some areas, grey literature, in some fields, grey literature can be a very good source of information. These could be also government reports, etc. So, and then also when you are planning to search for your studies, test multiple search strings, see whether they are good enough or not. Have a benchmark list. So 10 studies of known relevance to your review, and see whether the search string will capture that benchmark list. If it doesn't, improve your search string. Go back and forth. Librarians can help a lot. So yeah, they should be trained in information science so they can help a lot. So that is when it comes to the searches. When it comes to the procedural transparency, I think nowadays, especially with all these different platforms, a huge amount of space in supplementary materials, one can be really, really transparent. But to be transparent, you need to keep a good record, especially if your review lasts for like a year. So report where and when did you do your search, what was the search string, what settings, who searched. This is important for the repeatability reasons, because it's not the same if I use Stockholm University Library and Linköping University Library. I won't have the same resources, or you know,
because the Stockholm one is better.
So etc. And it's important to note that. How did you decide what was relevant? Did you have some kind of set criteria or not? Have you had a supervisor checking what you included in at least small subsample to make sure that you have done a good, consistent work throughout screening, etc.? How was data or any information extracted? Did you have a nice, Excel sheet that you've prepared in advance? Have you checked the consistency again with someone else? Has someone checked these outputs? How did you judge quality? Did you judge quality? Did you have consistency check also of that quality? Usually quality judgment is done always in two because of the subjectivity issues. How were studies combined? Which studies were excluded from analysis? Why you excluded? So often we have a list of excluded studies with the full text. It's full text with reasons for exclusion, where we have a very short sentence saying, okay, this was wrong population, wrong intervention, wrong outcome, etc., etc. So you are fully transparent. Okay. And then it is procedural consistency is very important when work is complex, it's also completed over a long time and with multiple people. So you want that everyone on your review acts as a single brain. Basically, you want everyone to make same decisions. So that's why it's important constantly to start every single stage with consistency checking. Do you know more or less how that's done? No? Should I explain quickly? So, for example, if you want to do consistency checking of the screening stage, one needs to take a subsample, let's say, 100 abstracts and titles, divide independently to your review team, and then everyone blindly checks the relevance of these 100 abstracts, says, okay, this is relevant because such and such, this is irrelevant because such and such. Then we meet and during a meeting discuss discrepancies. And then if the agreement is less than 80%, we do another round. And then third round if needed, until everyone really understands why certain studies are excluded or why not, etc. And so that can be done for screening, full text, title and abstract, data extraction. Okay, so review methodological plan or review protocol is very useful to have, even for yourself. You don't have to publish it. You can also put it on OSF and check that work is done the same with time and people. This is what I just mentioned. Make sure that everyone is aware of the same definitions, interpretations, enactments. And this is what I explain now. Okay, and then this is, Giuseppe, what you ask a little bit about, I think, quality assessment. So there is a formal tools and there is, tools that you can make. So for the quantitative studies, I said sufficiency in replication, appropriateness of the intervention, appropriateness of measurements method, confounding factors. These are some of the questions you would ask, and same questions to every single study. So you look through the same lenses, including academic literature and grey literature. And so I think that's it.
Thank you.